Well, again, hi. I am Maggie Stripmutter, and I am the Macintosh Memorial Library's adult programming and outreach librarian. And I am so excited to introduce, and I apologize, I should have asked you how to pronounce your name before, but
Eunsook Jung. That's right. Yeah.
Perfect. And she is here through Badger Talks with the UW-Madison. And we'll be talking about the South and North Korea relations. So I will hand it over to her and she will get us started.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to be here and talking about South and North Korea relations. My name is Eunsook Jung. I'm an assistant dean at the College of Letters Science, but my academic training, I'm a political scientist. So I used to teach courses on these kind of topics, North and South Korea relations and politics. So I'm excited to share what I know. I'm actually Korean. I'm Korean American. I grew up in Korea up to my 20s, and I moved to Madison, Wisconsin for my Ph.D. program. So Korean politics, I kept in touch, and I'm stay interested in Korean politics. So I will today try to give sort of rundown of all these different aspects that are going on. So I asked these questions in the talk, that what shapes the relationships between North and South Korea? Answer is, there are so many stakeholders in this relationship. So it's very difficult to solve the problem or even address whose interests can be represented or not represented. It becomes a very complicated issue. That's why it's still stalemate. So if you ask me, where does it stand? It's like very unclear, very uncertain. So not sure where we'll go. But one thing is the Korean War that happened in 1950 to 53, that is still unended. There is some people try to actually declare the not ceasefire, but declare the end of Korean War. But it met with that kind of initiative, met with a lot of challenges. So what shapes the relationship can be viewed by whose national interests can be represented better in this relationship. So for example, USA has a huge voice in this relationship, and USA is having a wait and see approach. They do not want to make some kind of initiative to talk to North Korea, unless North Korea willing to make some concessions before as a prerequisite to the talk. But they cannot agree on the terms. Therefore, USA is not moving. They might consider humanitarian sort of concession, but not willing to take a sanctions off. North Korea is unwilling to give up nuclear weapons. The more worrisome about their survival, it's unlikely that the more North Korea is worried about their own survival, the more likely that they're unwilling to give up nuclear weapons. So that's where the stalemate coming from, that USA and South Korea are requesting North Korea to make some concessions before the talk and before anything happened. But North Korea is unwilling to give up their nuclear weapons and ask USA and South Korea to make some concessions before they talk. And that's where it stands right now. And in terms of South Korea, the Jae-in-moon, who is a current president, is the last years of presidency. South Korea is having presidential election soon in March 2022. So it's about like 6 weeks, a little more than 6-7 weeks later, South Korea will elect a new president. So for Moon Jae-in's last term, it's very hard to pull anything out to change the policy, although definitely Jae-in-moon wants to leave the legacy that he made a huge improvement between North and South Korea. And for China, here, China's national interests are also play a role. That is, they want to maintain the status quo as much as possible. And that's one way, because if there were to be any kind of issues in North Korea, they don't want to deal with the refugee issues. They don't want North Korea to be completely taken by South Korea. That means that China's actually existence can be threatened more than when North Korea is not there. They want North Korea to be there as a buffer zone. And Japan always looking for an opportunity to influence global politics, global security, although right now its own constitution, they cannot actually send any troops overseas for any kind of security reasons. For Japan, if there were to be anything, then they want to actually do something about it. So all this kind of national interest, their preference, makes it even more difficult to make any changes in the Northeast Asian security that, and especially in particular, the relationship between and North-South Korea, because there are countries that who don't want to see any kind of changes. So where does it stand in terms of current status? So right now, is the current status, there's further engagement is not expected at this point. There has been, there were some kind of movement since Panmunjom Declaration in 2018. There were inter-Korean engagement was resumed, but it was soon halted in mid-2020. Since then, North Korea has recently conducted a missile test, which also gives more threat to Northeast Asia. So this sustained diplomacy is very unlikely at this point. And it's very difficult to, unfortunately, predict what's going to happen between the relationship between North and South Korea, as well as relationships between United States and North Korea, because they have incompatible stances on the prerequisites for engagement. As I briefly talked about, that US would like more of the concession from North Korea before US can begin any kind of talks. And North Korea requests more concessions from US for resuming any kind of engagement. And so right now, the major policy shift in both countries are very unlikely. So tensions is likely to remain for the unforeseeable future, unfortunately. There's upcoming South Korea's election. Just give you, let you know, this is the two candidates. We do have the South Korea has a 4 candidate, but these are the top candidates. So Jae-myung Lee is the one. If he were to be elected, sort of engagement policy is likely to be continued. He is a current governor of Gyeonggi province, and he's been the progressive so far, and he's likely to carry the political parties, more more liberal parties stance about North Korea, whereas Seok Yeol-yoon, he is the former prosecutor, head of the prosecutor, is very conservative. And if he were to be elected, the Yoon might be elected, then he likely to use kind of, he mentioned, actually, he said he will do strikes on North Korea. So it seems to be very unclear. I mean, we cannot say for sure, but it's very likely that he's not gonna have an engagement policy or more peace, like dovish policy for North Korea. So now, depending on who becomes the president, the policy, South Korea's policy towards North Korea will also change, and along with what's going to happen with the U.S. wait and see approach. So this is where it stands. I wanted to start my talk with where things stand, what's going on, who are the major stakeholders could affect the relationship of South and North Korea. Most of the time, most of the history since Korean War that unended, but on ceasefire since 1953. South and North Korea relationships were always very tensive, very unpredictable, and full of surprises. So in most cases, they did not have a good relationship, but there are some breakthroughs in the history. So I'm going to quickly go through what types of breakthroughs that South and North Korea relationships have so far since 1953, and what those breakthroughs entail in terms of relationship change, what both countries wanted and to agree, but then not been actually implemented. So most recent breakthrough that we've seen was the Panmunjom Declaration. Panmunjom is the place where you see, I don't know whether you can see, there is a little mark Panmunjom. This is a border between artificial border between South and North Korea. And nobody's allowed to go in there. There's the US forces and the South Korean forces one side and North Korean forces the other side. They made a event of crossing that border to show that they're going to work together. So basically, Panmunjom Declaration that was agreed in 2018 by Jae-in-moon and Jong Un that met together, is that they wanted to advance into Korea relations, and basically alleviating the military tensions and eliminating the danger of the war, and actively cooperating to establish the permanent and solid peace regime on the Korean peninsula. When this happened, and also this was followed by the Singapore summit that happened. Former President Trump visited Singapore and met with the Jong Un. So there was a series of détente movement that going on between US and North Korea. And that sort of also, Jae-in-moon was a kind of mediator between this kind of the movement that going on, or interdialogue between US and North Korea. South Korea was a mediator and tried to make things work. And one of the sort of significant outcome we see was this Panmunjom. But again, as you can see, this didn't continue. Like declaration didn't lead to actually the better relationship between North and South Korea, unfortunately. But this was a breakthrough, because even it was so hard for two leaders meet together in the one spot. And this was like historical kind of moment, but didn't work out. We did have other kind of times that these similar things happen, not very often, but so we are talking about here 2018, right? Panmunjom Declaration. Before then, there was a previous administration in South Korea had June 15th, North and South joint declaration. And as you can see throughout the talk, sometimes I say South and North Korea, and sometimes North and South Korea, South and North, and back and forth. And it becomes such a political issue whether North comes first or South comes first. right? So South Korean people will definitely say it's a South and North Korea. And North Korea people will insist South and North and South Korea, right? So this you can see official name is June 15th, North and South Joint Declaration. So definitely they sort of give more importance to North, giving them a little bit of upper hand there. But this was done in 2000, and this was similar thing. They say reunification here. Panmunjom Declaration did not talk about reunification, and they intentionally eliminated the clause of reunification. So you could see each declaration, they have a similar aspects in there, but not necessarily same. And they talked about humanitarian issues, promoting balanced development and dialogue between relevant authorities. And so this is what happened in 2000. This is when actually one of the Progressive Party leader became a president. That's when happened. And before then will be the 2007. Again, this declaration was done to, this declaration is together for an end to military hostilities, inter-Korean economic cooperation, humanitarian cooperation, and exchanges and cooperation in social issues. So as you can see that what they agreed on and what they really care is that, or what they really care is the nuclear weapons, but they don't mention it because nuclear weapon is hidden here. But all in all, as you can see, there's a humanitarian concern, because North Korea going through famines and some typhoons, natural disasters. The food deficiency is one of the big development issue. So one issue that they talk about will be humanitarian issue. The other is definitely economic issues. North Korea is going through a difficult time because they have sanctions against North Korea. They are not able to import and export any kind, so they can't export anything to any other countries. The imports are limited. So their economy has to be contained and able to they able to survive within their own economy, which has been really, really hard. And so economic cooperation has been a big issue, but oftentimes both South Korea and the United States ask denuclearization as a condition for economic cooperation. For North Korea, we'll say, North Korea does not want to give up nuclear weapons, because when they give up the nuclear weapons, their survival can be threatened by international community. They're worried about what happened to Libya. What if US strikes them with the missiles, and what if they don't have, North Korea does not have a defensive capacity? So because of these issues, all in all, denuclearization is the aim of all these parties, but except for North Korea, makes it difficult for the economic development or economic cooperation happens. There is some sort of different opinions about how we approach North Korea. Like, should we approach North Korea, why don't we provide economic aid first, so that once they become better, they might actually look for more peaceful solutions. Like, when you have a middle class, countries likely to be democracy. Like, look at Vietnam, used to be a threat. Now they're incorporated in the world economy. Can we use the, same way that we actually, that how China, how Vietnam become more of part of world economy? Can we make the North Korea that way? But then other critics will say we really cannot give up the condition of denuclearization, and so that's another differences that we need to deal with the denuclearization first, anything before we do anything about it. So that's the sort of division that happens. let's help them with the, humanitarian economic issues. And then once they sort of, mellow, then we can talk about or have a middle class. They understand the importance of capital market. Then we can talk about, denuclearization. But then the other side don't want to do that way. So these are the sort of the issues are going on, and no one is willing to go, say, okay, let's not talk about denuclearization. Let's just start with the economic relationships. So currently, North Korea is saying US should lift the sanction against North Korea, but US is unwilling to lift the sanction. We don't want to reward the country who doesn't listen. So that's where things going on right now. So look at this, as you can see. Here's Japan, here's South Korea, Seoul's here, Pyongyang's here, and they're, they're very close to each other in terms of distance. It's not that far at all, and this is the parallel. So before we go on, I think I sort of briefly talked about what's at stake right now and what's shaping the relationship. I would like to briefly talk about origin. And as you know, North and South Korea, they're divided, and people are not allowed to travel, right? And there are still divided families there who were had to flee North Korea, or some part of the family remained North Korea, some fled, and the family members are still living apart and not able to see each other since 1953. And some of course, many of them are now dying, given, how far, time went by. But I want to briefly talk about why is it then back then North and South Korea were divided in the first place. Okay, and I would say, if I have to say one thing, it will be a colonial legacy, unfortunately. And it was not the will of Korean people. It was international politics that affected the division of North and South Korea. That's why when the system divides you, and international politics divides you without the will of people, and that makes it even more difficult to solve, because system still states that the war never ended, and the stakeholders that were there still want, they have to push for their own national interests. So this is, I'm going to have a long quote. So Gregory Henderson, and this is coming from a book who was written by one of the renowned Korean specialists. He passed away not long ago, but this book, he quotes Gregory Henderson, the former US Foreign Service officer and the noted Korean scholar, wrote in 1974, quote, "No division of nation in the present world is so astonishing in its origin as the division of Korea. None is so unrelated to conditions or sentiment within the nation itself at the time of division was effected. None is to this day so unexplained, and none does blunder and planning oversight appear to have played so large a role. Finally, there is no division for which US government bears so heavily a share of responsibility as it bears for the division of Korea." So I have a little more explanation. The first, sorry, the participant list is right blocking I'm gonna just move things around. So, oops, sorry. So first, United States allowed, so this is time, I don't know how, like many of you remember the 1919, from year 1919 to 1945, South Korea was the colony of Japan. And when the World War was going on, South Korea was Japan's colony. And so, and the South Korea became the kind of war site between Russia and Japan and China, and they all tried to take Korea over to their side. And Japan was the one who colonized from 1919 to 1945 until the World War II ended. But United States allowed Japan to colonize Korean peninsula in return for recognition of US colonizing Philippines. So that was the like sort of deal that they made. And second, as the World War II drew to a close, US set with the Soviet Union to carve out Korean territories without any consultation to Koreans and with no Korean experts present. So in 1945, President Roosevelt proposed US-Soviet-Chinese trusteeship over Korea, but no clear ideas about how the trusteeship over Korea will pan out. So you can imagine that they just decided to divide up the country. And later, US-backed Republic of Korea officially proclaimed in August 15, 1948. Soviet-backed Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, which is North Korea, was proclaimed in September 9, 1948. And this is the beginning of the North and South Korea having their respective government. But however, because one side was occupied by Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, and one side occupied by US, and of course that back then is Cold War, and there is a huge tension and competition between US and the US and Soviet Union going on. And North Korea definitely had an ambition to unify, as much as South Korea did too, but North Korea's ambition to unify the Korean peninsula was led to Korean Civil War, which was that 1950 to 53. But because it was a proxy war, it's not just a civil war between two parties, independent of any kind of global politics. It was a proxy war between the United States and Soviet Union, and they participated in a war later when Civil War was not going to end. And so US finally intervened, and when Soviet and as well as Soviet Union and Chinese soldiers came in when actually US was, so basically South Korea was losing in the war in the beginning, and US said we cannot let this happen, because if we were to let this happen, then South Korea could be part of North Korea, and the communism and will be stronger. Then Soviet Union will be way stronger in North Korea, in Northeast Asia, which threatens Japan as well as US power. So US jump in to fight against the Soviet Union and North Korean, like most North Korean army, and that's when China come down with like huge number of soldiers, and they weren't able to end the war, but instead they signed the ceasefire. And that since then, these two government states having their own track record separately since then. So this armistice signed 1953, and since then, Koreans have been living in two different states. And we are not allowed to go in and go up or go down, and it makes it difficult to communicate. And that's why this is not an only issue between North and South Korea. US is involved in it, China is involved in it, and also what happens in North and South Korea affects the relative power of China over Northeast Asia and relative power of Japan over Northeast Asia. So it becomes the very hot potato for any kind of global security as well. So that's where things going on. And so they ended up, so one time South Korean soldiers went all the way down to the Busan, where the southern part of South Korea, with the US. That's why in Korea, MacArthur is the very famous, general that who actually helped Korean War. So he's very famous. He pushed all the way, but met with the Chinese soldiers, and they ended up cutting it here, that 38th parallel. And that's where, and this is a military demarcation line, and they build the South Korea and North Korea build the demilitarized zone. And this is where people cannot go. I mean, there are some people come through, but it's the heavily armed area. So so South and North Korea is extremely different. So like, in my life, I met twice North Korean people who are not refugees, who are actually North Korean. In some kind of security conference I attended, there was a person, and he was not allowed to do things very freely. He was, when you attend a conference, you usually stay in the hotel that conference is happening, and this person was actually like drove to like the dropped off by embassy person, and then there was a minder of this person is staying there, and this person will take him back to their own hotel by North Korean embassy person. And yeah, it was very interesting. It's very they have a different accent and different word. The South Korean language is much more influenced by American word, like computer, we say computer, like television, right? But in North Korea, they avoided any kind of influence from English. So they have a different word for those kind of things. And they have a different accent. And so sometimes it's a little hard to, I will understand what North Koreans say, but there might be quite a few words that I would not understand what they're referring to. So since things have been very different, and diet is very different, because North Korea is not really fertilizable land, a lot of more mountainous. So they do like a potato-based kind of noodles, or their meals are not necessarily, they're not known for food just because they're much more infertile land and mountainous, and it's not really for the agriculture. They're more industrialized than South Korea. For South Korea, we have a lot more rice field and more fertile land. So much more diverse kind of food than North Korea. And so when North Korea hit by famine, it's a lot more difficult because they have a less arable land than South Korea. But so what does North Korea look like? South Korea might be much easier to understand. It's a capitalist country. Now, I don't know whether any of you are familiar with the BTS or Gangnam Style. Now, like Korean soap operas are popular. And it's not that that's exactly correct representation of South Korea, but, it's like more common, like pop culture and so forth. North Korea, when North and South Korea went on to trusteeship between Soviet Union and US respectively, North Korea wanted to follow the socialism. And the leader, North Korean leader who came to power by Soviet Union was Il-sung Kim, or Kim is the last name, so Kim Il-sung. And he had a Juche ideology, and Juche ideology is a self-reliance. And what does this say is that all ideological work must be subordinated to the interests of Korean revolution. In other words, state and the leaders and its political vision come before the interests and identities of individuals, right? So when you look at North Korean videos, you see everybody moving same way, and they really emphasize a collective mind. And Juche views North Korea, or Korea, as a chosen land, as people are told consistently that world civilization originated from the Korean peninsula. And Juche was a declaration of political independence from his two communist sponsors, a creative application of Marxism and Leninism. So you can definitely see, and that's what they're still following, though it's unclear how much they're like, following Marxism or Leninism, but that's where it stands. So, So North Korea's economy, I mean, it's completely failed. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. It just shows that North Korea initially was doing really, really well, and how Christianity came to South Korea was actually through North Korea. There are a lot of trade was going on because North Korea has a border with China and border with the former Soviet Union and Russia. So it's more connected to rest of the world than more than South Korea. However, and so initially industrial output was great, but going through Korean War, their economy went down. Their central planning, like what Soviet Union did, or what China did, that central planning, like closed economy, did not really work out. So demise of the USSR threw North Korea's entire economy into chaos. So that's about like 1989, that when even Soviet Union did not have enough shoes, enough food, and one of their ally basically demise, and that made it even harder for North Korea. When Kim Il-sung died, Jong Il Kim, was in power from 1994 to 2011. And he used the Sanggun 정치, which is military first politics. So basically, every family has a military, and it's the military is the most important part of the country. There was a severe famine that starved like 24 million people. By now, it might be like 30 million people, but severe famine starved, and about like 3 million people died. And they had a campaign that let's eat only 2 meals a day, and they ration the food and they give it out, and everybody only can eat a certain amount of food. But they did have a nuclear test along that time. There are famines going on, economy is falling apart. They were still able to pull the nuclear test, which was 2006 and 2009. And even before then, there are a lot of sort of worries from people that does North Korea have a capacity for nuclear weapons? And people are unclear about the capacity. But this is a time that they realize that North Korea has a nuclear test capacity. And also for North Korea, they basically realize only way to survive is to have a North Korea, so that no countries in the world can strike them whenever they want to or feel like it. Because if they have a nuclear weapon, nobody will willing to hit them for the risk of nuclear weapon exploding. So when they go through economic hardship and in complete famine, they actually put all the effort into nuclear weapon. So that's where it stands right now. It's the 2006 and 9, and we now for sure that we know that North Korea has a nuclear weapon and becomes again Achilles gun, but there's nothing much change. And as you know, Kim Jong Un, who's the son of who's the son of Kim Jong Il. He's in power. He's very young. It's 2011 since present. He eliminated political rivals. I don't know whether you remember, he killed his aunt and uncle who might have a better relationship with China, and maybe what what has been said is, because it's very hard to say what's the reliable sources on that, because they're so limited. Even there are only handful amount of people, or like, you know, limited number of experts that who actually visited North Korea, who talk to people. So sometimes finding a reliable sources are the difficult task. But basically, what has been said was that his uncle, when the Jong Il died, his uncle and his aunt was pushing more like a Chinese path, or opening up to the world. And because they had a more better connection with China, they were able to rise probably better if they were to take that option of becoming more like China, which means that politically socialism, but economically following the capitalist model. So opening up North Korea's economy, but keeping the Labor Party in power, like how China did. But Jong Un did not want to go that way. So of course, his position is kind of fragile. So eliminated political rivals and did the tests even more so, 2013, 2016, and 2017. And what this means, as you can see, you know, we had talk about 2007 declaration, 2020 declaration, 2017 declaration, 2017, 2000, and in 1997, sorry, those declarations. What that does is that those declarations are met with a lot of criticism as well. Like some part of Korean people would say, you know, we don't like to have these kind of declarations when North Korea have a capacity for nuclear weapons. And some people said, you know, we need to make more engagement. And some people say we need to disengage. So there's a lot of division going on between these two, how we respond to North Korea. But we are for sure that nuclear test was going on, and things has been a little different under the Jong Un. Is that they call merchant class emerged in North Korea. One of the wealthy people in North Korea are the people who can import foreign goods, or who has the ability to smuggle foreign goods to North Korea, becomes a merchant class. They do underground market, and underground market provides the venue for exchanging information, also getting the goods that are not readily available in the actual market, and also to get some lucrative items through those black market. And these are the people who can deal with the dollars, who can deal with the Chinese yuan, you know, like money, or Russian money. These are the people who can actually grow as a merchant class. So they're booming of underground market. So these things, they becomes the kind of place that they have, you know, get information about it. So once I talked to somebody who visited North Korea, and they say there are enough people, only the top people will follow North Korea's regime, but most of people will not actually follow, you know, what North Korea's government is doing. So there are, you know, it's not like North Korea is a one uniform entity. If you actually open the box and look at the inside North Korean politics, you will see all different kind of people there who have a different opinions. So I want to briefly talk about South Korea, where so far I talked about North Korea, where it stands, and in South Korea. So when Kim Il-sung came to power, Seungman Lee came to power by the support of USA. He actually studied in USA. His actually wife died, and then he got, I think his second wife was American. And the US needed somebody who they can trust. So Seungman Lee became the president of South Korea. And after Korean War, his regime actually became extremely dictatorial and corrupt. So he had to step down by the student revolution in 1960. So Korean government was not that stable in the beginning, and their economic condition was really bad. And some of the World Bank people, when they saw South Korea in 1960, they say that Korea is a basket case. This country has no hope. And that's the Korea that we are talking about. There was a moderate successor after the student revolution, but didn't last. Military came to power right away, and Jong Il Park was a dictator who actually initiated the miracle of Han River. He was in power from 1963 to 1979 until he was assassinated by Korean CIA, head of Korean CIA. And that's when, but he basically made the economic development possible that the Korea that you know, I mean, there was a little bit of how was the Park Jong-il was able to build the Korean economy that fast? I mean, there's a lot of theories about, what made Korea possible to develop. There are a lot of actually theories, competing theories, but one of them was that there was a very good coordination between the state and private sector. So state pushed economic goals with the various incentives. Success would not have been possible without like those compliance of the business. So if you look at if you look at the 1953 Seoul, like all war damage, like no clean water and everything. And if you look at the modern day Seoul, I mean, it's everything you can see, it's completely different. Right? Like I go back to Korea usually like every year or two, and I see the difference, and their new buildings are there, and the changes are really fast. The pace is really fast. So I don't know. I want to make sure that I know that I went through more than 45 minutes. So is that okay if I continue a few more minutes?
Yes, please do.
Oh, okay. So there has been always challenge from north. So there was since the 1953, there was underground war that going on. This is a tunnel. I don't know whether you can see the picture that these kind of tunnel was found during the demilitarized zone that they can actually send the troops without letting, without like South Korea knowing. So there's a highly organized tunnel digging in DMZ area. There was the competition between military spending, military capacity. There will be report coming out every year whose military power is better. And North Korea it's really hard. As I mentioned it earlier, North Korea is like a black hole. They say not many people were able to visit North Korea, and when I talk to people who visited North Korea, a lot of people have minders, and they're not allowed to go around, freely, and they're given the propaganda information, and it's very limited. So it's the without parallel, the toughest intelligence target in the world, and diplomacy as well. They say they're unpredictable as ever. Like one day you sit at the table, next day they cut down the communication line, and so so the President Park actually used that build the military. I don't want to go into the detail for the time, but South Korea wanted to launch the secret serious effort to develop the actually nuclear bomb, but it got actually aborted by US. So South Korea does not have a nuclear bomb or nuclear power, but because the US and the world global politics, the nuclear proliferation becomes a high priority concern for Washington, especially India having nuclear tests in 1974. So Park Jong-hee wanted to have a nuclear weapon, but it got actually didn't get support from the US, and South Korea doesn't have it. So that's another issue here, like, oh, South Korea should have a nuclear weapon. But if South Korea had nuclear weapon, it would have been like even more dangerous. So the opinions divided. So what I would end with is that there are two lines. So we have looked at so just briefly, like sum up, we started with what shapes relationship between North and South Korea. And we said that there's so many stakeholders, right? There's the US, there is, US want to see more concessions before they sit at the table. They have North Korea, they don't want to give up the nuclear power because that's a survival line. We have South Korea who are divided by party lines, and elections coming, depending on who becomes the president will be different. China don't want any changes. It's already too much to handle their own country's problems. Don't want any overseas problems that affect China. Japan, well, Japan is like, let me handle these problems. I really want to influence the North Korea, like Northeast Asia. But the America cannot trust Japan because of a history of World War II. And Japan has a Pacific constitution that does not allow Japan to be involved in global security, because we cannot trust Japan's ambition and or their hidden motives, right? So that's what's going on. And again, given North Korea's very unpredictable diplomacy, and it's very difficult to predict. And when none of them can make it to the agree on terms for engagement, no one is willing to engage unless terms change. But changing of the terms is so difficult because it's basically North Korea is unwilling to denuclearize, and United States is not willing to lift the sanctions and help with the economy unless North Korea denuclearize. South Korea in between don't have much power, sadly, and they are also divided internally. Right? So not all the South Korean people want to unify. Not all the South Korea wants to engage. Not all the South Koreans want to provide economic aid. It goes by party lines. So previously, ones who made a declaration, other than the Jae In-moon, which is the current president, Tae-jung Kim and Roh Moo-yeon is more like a dovish. They're dovish policy people. Kim Dae-jung, who was the president 1998, 2003 administration, Roh Moo-yeon from 2003 to 2008. They are the one, and along with the Moon Jae-in, who's in power right now, they want dovish. They want more engagement. They want more sunshine policy. Let's shine the sun so that they can disarm themselves. And let's cooperate. And engagement policy for peace and prosperity under Roh, it's again, same thing. If you are closed down, let's engage them first before we talk about denuclearize the nuclearization. We don't need to trade in the equal terms. We don't need to worry about contingencies. Let's just first give, then receive later. But this was criticized by the conservatives, like many conservatives. So for these dovish group, it's more Democrats and more liberal party lines. But if you look at the, I'm going to move, these are the separated families that meeting, and so there are humanitarian concerns in dealing with also meeting sort of uniting the people that who separated for many years, their sisters, their brothers, and all that. But there are also conservative party lines. They're very hawkish, and they don't like the idea of give first and receive later. And the population-wide, I think will be almost 50-50 in terms of whether you agree with the hawkish or whether you agree with the dovish. So Myung-Bak-Lee administration, which was 2008 to 2013, Kun-hye Park administration from 2013 to 2016. These are the two administrations who did hawkish. They say conditional reciprocity, because earlier is a non-contingent, like no contingent is, no contingency related, you give, you help out. But here is, nope, we have a condition. And contingent, good is basically, good is return for good, bad is bad for bad. So if you don't do anything, we won't help you. You gotta do something. So basically, these presidents said, we don't believe rice fertilizers, dollar-making business like Mount Kumgang tours, or the Kaesong industrial complex will work out. Because this is the projects that, policies that are implemented under the dovish presidents, and say, let's help them out. When they economically better, they have a middle class, the people experience money, capital, trade, people will open up. But for them, it's like, nope, we don't want that. So when Myung-Bak-Lee, who was in power from 2008 to 2013, had a Vision 3000. What it was is no denuclearization, no economic aid. But if you were to do the denuclearization, we'll make you your GMP to be like 3,000. Right now, they're barely making any, right? So that's the sort of, but this kind of conditional policy made engagement impossible because North Korean people will not sit at the table. And again, right now, I'm gonna quickly go through, this is more of, and so you could see that, and so Moon Jae-in was 2017 until present. Again, with the election, we never know what's going to happen, but he was strongly against military action, and he had a sports diplomacy through the Pyeongchang Olympics. Although he was caught in between Abe and Trump, he was trying to build the engagement policy possible. So he's more of dovish, more liberal party line. But again, he met with a lot of criticism. So I hope this talk was able to sort of tell you, I mean, I wasn't able to give you any answer about what's going to happen in North Korea or in Northeast Asian security. And I cannot tell you what best answer we can have for North Korea. I mean, if I have to say, I will be more dovish, disengagement does not bring any better diplomatic solution. But within South Korea, these policies are divided along the party lines and all the way to the ordinary population, that people are divided about what should be done. So we'll see with upcoming elections in South Korea in March, early March, there was new president was sworn in, and how that will, who's going to become the president will determine what kind of action will be followed, stance of against or towards the North Korea, but we'll see what's going to happen. And that also same thing, whether Biden administration will change wait and see policy, but it's very unlikely that there will be a huge change from US towards the North Korea. That means there might not be a huge change unless the hawkish party candidate becomes the president of South Korea. So there are a lot of variables. There are a lot of contingencies can affect these relationships. So I hope I have some sort of, about China and Japan as well. But given the time, I would like to move to, I'd like to move to the, and actually, I would like to end the talk by saying that there are many contingencies and variables in dealing with it, but thanks for listening. And I am happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. That's just a wealth of information, which is wonderful. And I wanted to just remind everybody that if they wanted to ask a question, then that is more than appropriate and able to happen. Since this is being recorded, if you didn't feel comfortable talking, please send a chat and I can definitely read that out for our presenter here to discuss. I did get one chat here that just says, thank you very much. It was a very informative Zoom, so thanks for that.
Thank you. I hope I did not bombard with all the little details.
No, personally, I think it was kind of like what that comment said. It's very informational and things that, I personally haven't been able to dive into before. And so that's really been able to open some more dialogue and thinking on my end.
Thank you.
We do have another question that says, thank you. Are you able to be a dual citizen and vote and pay taxes?
So I cannot. No South Koreans are allowed to be a dual citizen. Right now, I am a Korean American. So I gained the citizenship not long ago. I stayed in the United States more than about 20 years. But so I was a permanent resident. So permanent resident means that I cannot actually vote for US elections, but I was able to overseas vote for Korean government. But when they recently introduced the overseas voting, which wasn't available when I first came to United States, now I'm an American citizen. So what that means is that I don't pay tax and I cannot actually vote in Korean elections. But I voted last presidential election here.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we also have another one that says, what role does Russia play in the relationship between South and North Korea? Are they really a silent observer? And of course, thank you and very interesting talk.
Thank you. I know it's always a question coming out. I think it's a very good question. And because how Soviet Union played a significant role in, dividing South and North Korea, and now we don't hear much about Russia, that a lot of people concerned about, what's going on with Russia, right? So I think that's the sort of question we can look into, that right now, Russia isn't paying much attention to what's going on in North and South Korea. However, given how Russia's expansionist policy, what they do in Ukraine and other parts of the Europe, that if there were to be some sort of changing of status quo in North Korea, that somehow it's going to be merged with the South Korea. There might be some kind of flees, like people, refugees, and so forth. Then Russia, it gives a very good reason for Russia to intervene on behalf of North Korea as a former ally. And that will actually make the global security really precarious, because that will brings back former sort of Cold War relationships and makes it even more difficult. So right now we don't see much of the Russia saying anything, but if there is to be any change in North Korea, then and there's a possibility that Russia and China will work together to maintain the status quo, which will pose some threat to a lot of threats to Japan, for South Korea and United States. And right now it's a very sensitive time, especially, you know, like US's global power is reducing, China's actually gaining. So this kind, you know, there is kind of very difficult time for US to lose the strong grip over maintain like status quo.
That seems to be what we have in the chat. Please, anybody, if you have any questions and don't feel like speaking out, go ahead and put it in the chat. Can give it another minute or so for anybody who wanted to say anything. Those are all wonderful questions. All right, not seeing anybody. Oh, hold on, I do now. What do the Korean people think about the military presence in South Korea? I believe is what SK is.
That's an excellent question. You know, like that's one of the biggest issue and biggest topic for social mobilization. I would say half of the people, mostly progressives, do not want presence of US in South Korea. Because it feels like, you know, neo-colonialism. It feels like we, you know, like South Koreans too much depend on in US for security. And however, half of the population, I would say that security is not something that you can be just hopeful about. You can be just like you can be only positive about security. That means it's more realistic. So you cannot gamble on what might happen when US troops leave South Korea. If US troops leave South Korea, a lot of people, I would say half of the population, is worried about any kind of military strike from North Korea, one way or another. Because not only that leaving troops is just leaving troops, but it's just signaling that how important South Korea is to US. So that's kind of the issue there. Some people say yes, some people say no. I will say, so my own opinion is, I understand that the sentiment of people, let's put it, ideally, it would be great if there's no US presence in South Korea. However, if I were the leader, I would not ask for US troops leaving South Korea, just for the contingencies that might happen. And because if you are a leader, it might be difficult to guarantee that nothing going to happen. And you have to work, you have to sort of make a policy based on, kind of what might happen if there were to, if something were to change. So it's divided and still it's divided. So right now the group of people asking the policy sort of steps should be the end the war. If you end the war, basically that leaves no reason for or less reason for US troops remaining in South Korea because there's no war. But there is difficulty getting to that agreement that there's, they try to, and it is supported by progressives in South Korea that yes, let's sign the end of war declaration. But a lot of people are saying, well, war hasn't ended. What's the point of signing the declaration when there is a still threat from North Korea? So issues are very much connected, I think.
Yeah. We also have a question. Do you have any recommendation for books to read on the history of the peninsula?
Yeah, I have a couple. Can I send it to you, Maggie? Then Maggie, would you be able to communicate with Aaron?
Yeah, if you would like, you can send
or Aaron, if you could give me your email address to Maggie, I'm happy to send it to you. I have a few books I can recommend, but I can. It'll be easier if I could just send it to you.
Yep, I can put my email address in here for anybody who wanted to have like perhaps extra questions or
book recommendations or anything like that. I'm happy to share.
Take yours down. We do have another question here. I'm just writing down something.
So Curtis is asking, is travel to South Korea possible now because of COVID? I was able to make it to Korea in October to visit my parents. But unfortunately right now, so back then, things are a little better. So I just needed to have a 1-night quarantine. So when I get there, I get the test and I wait for the test to come out. And before my COVID test comes out negative, then I can be released. I mean, I can be in the hotel or any kind of like confined facility, and then I can go around and meet my family. Right now, they require 10-day quarantine with your own expense. Used to be 14-day when the COVID just started. So with a 10-day quarantine, it's possible. If you need to go, you can go, but it's just too much to leave the work. And I have a kid. I don't think my kid can handle, 9-year-old can handle 10-day quarantine in a small room. So, so we are waiting for the quarantine period to go down. But right now, because of Omicron, South Korea's number is actually going pretty high, not compared to US. Compared to US, it's pretty good, but because it's a small country and, you know, it's very dense, like density is high. So people are worried.
So it sounds like we've got another one that says, I'm reading Human Acts by Han Khan right now. Have you read this book?
I've read that book. Yeah, that's a great book. And this is that's by actually about the Gwangju massacre. And what happened in South Korea in 1980, but looking at it from the, you know, the boys' perspective, like the people who are living in that in Gwangju area. It's amazing that like people actually bled, like people sacrificed themselves to make South Korea democratized. Because I was just rushing through the topic, but when we covered the South Korea, we rushed through, so I wasn't able to talk much about what happened in South Korea after Park Chung-hee, and there was a couple of dictators and military dictators, but after that there was a huge outburst of movements, and that's one of them. The Hangang is actually talks about in the Human Acts. It's very sad. It's very sad, but it actually gives the you know, human face of what happened at the time, that people revolted against the government, and government basically, you know, killing people for maintaining the order. And then they basically said it's the North Korean spies. But sad part is, because now some people, conservatives, don't want to believe in what happened. So there's also refabrication of what happened in the past. And that's the sad part, that sometimes like truth cannot be, what's the word? Like we cannot, you know, some people don't like to believe in truth and make stories. And that's the sort of sad part. But I love the author as well. The author has other books, and I love, yeah.
So we would have time for one more question. So please feel free to either speak it or put it in the chat. Otherwise, we will be able to end it there. I definitely just want to say, and again, a huge thank you for coming and speaking on this. And it was absolutely wonderful. And we will have this video available for our patrons as well, hopefully relatively soon through our YouTube and our Facebook page. And it looks like everybody else is agreeing with me too. It was so great. We appreciate this. Thank you so much. So yeah, everyone have a wonderful rest of your day and weekend. Thank you again for coming to the library program here. And thank you again, Eunsook. It was absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for listening and asking wonderful questions.
Yes.
Happy to talk more later in the future if you want to learn more about South Korea. We'll see. And Happy New Year to you all. And I wish you, healthy year for everybody.
Yes.